everybody. In this session, we'll learn about guided reading. This 20 to 30 minute powerful structure that many classrooms use to teach reading instruction. I'll be able to walk you through the entire 30 minutes, showing you each part of the guided reading lesson and what that might look like. I'll even give you some tips on how to make guided reading more effective in your classroom. Then you'll have the opportunity to watch some guided reading in action. You'll watch a traditional guided reading lesson, a virtual guided reading lesson, and then a modified guided reading lesson, in which I also give a little reflection on how I thought that lesson went. And then finally, you'll have the opportunity to plan a guided reading lesson yourself. Let's get started. When you hear about guided reading, you are typically going to hear it associated with researchers Fontys and Pinnell from Ohio State University. So Fontys and Pinnell would be responsible for what is often coined F&P, leveled text, or you might hear them associated with the words LLI, which is an intervention that uses guided reading with struggling readers. You might also hear Fontys and Pinnell in relation to a curriculum system that they have called Fontys and Pinnell Classroom. So when we think about guided reading, they're names that often come up. A couple of other names that come up when we talk about guided reading, you may hear of Jan Richardson, or you may hear of the sisters. Now, while they are not researchers and they do not work at the university level, they are practitioners, so teachers out in the field who do this work a lot and make a lot of professional development supports for teachers. So you'll often see like their models or their names. Now, guided reading takes place over about 20 to 30 minutes. It takes place for several days. Kids will actually read the same book for anywhere from like typically two, but as many as like 3 or 4 days. The group will have 2 to 6 students in it. Never more than 6. Guided reading books normally come in packs of 6 because 6 is absolutely the largest you would ever want a guided reading group. The group will be pretty flexible. So by flexible, I mean they'll all be placed in the group together, but let's say after the first day, one child's not working out in the group, the book is too easy or the book is too hard, that group might be changed a little bit. Unlike the reading groups, probably when you went to school, they're changing more frequently and often have kids coming in and out. The group typically meets at a kidney table or a similar shaped table in a classroom so that the teacher can reach all of the students, so that the teacher can lean in and listen to each of the kids read. Everyone in the group is reading the same book. They've been placed in this group based on reading level. So we're looking for kids in this group to all have the same what's called instructional levels. So the other day when you did running records, you were looking for books that kids were reading with independence, books for reading workshop, like at 96 to 100%. This is going to be books that are more like 90 to 95%. And finally, guided reading isn't just for low kids. It actually can be used with any kids as a form of reading instruction. Most often it's used with lower elementary students, but it even can be used with older kids. Let's explore now how that guided reading time breaks down. Remember that it was like 20 to 30 minutes, right? So we have 20 to 30 minutes of time. Let's look at how you spend that time. For the first 1 to 2 minutes, okay, which is going to come out to be about 5% of your total guided reading time, you want to do the text introduction, right? And in this introduction, you want to engage the kids. You want to get them excited about reading. You want to give a purpose. Why are you reading this book? You want to give them the text structure or the genre or whether it's fiction or nonfiction. It's like a teeny little book talk. Okay, let me show you how one might go. So I'm doing guided reading book with this book. It's called Digger and Daisy. So I might say something like this. In this fiction story, Digger and Daisy are going to star in a play. Thumbs up if you've ever been in a skit or a show or a play. Wow, that's just about all I can say. So many of you have experience with this. Well, in this story, Daisy is super worried that something bad is going to happen. As we read, pay close attention to what she thinks will happen and how her problem gets solved. Okay, so that's your text introduction. Again, just getting the kids excited, 1 to 2 minutes, giving them a little bit of a purpose, like why are they reading this book, and giving them a little bit of the structure. That percentage is then followed by the next chunk of time. This time is like 2 to 3 minutes. And then during this time, you'll do some vocab work or some sight word work. I often embed the character names into this part, right? It'll be really hard for the kids to read the text if they don't have the character names. So a couple of little sight words, a couple of word meanings, a couple of character names. This can be a good way to spend this first chunk of vocabulary and sight word time. So this is how that might go in my lesson. In this story, you will meet Digger. Okay, this is Digger's name. Can you find Digger's name somewhere inside your book? Okay, and I'll lean in and I'll be, oh yeah, good job. There it is. I see that many of you found Digger's name all over the place. Now, there's a second character in the book. Her name is Daisy. Can you see if you can find that word in your book? Again, I'll lean in, help the kids find it. Okay, but here's something I need to tell you. I need to tell you that in this book, Digger and Daisy both start with D, and this often causes first graders some trouble. When you look at these two words, how will you tell the difference? What do you think? Oh, that's a good one. I hadn't thought of that. Okay, so here are some things I heard. I heard somebody say they know Digger because they'll see the double G. Okay, and I heard Amy say that she'll know Daisy because when Y comes at the end of a word, it makes that E sound. Okay, and Joe said that he'll know Digger because it ends with the These are all good ways to keep track of which word's Digger and which word's Daisy. Let's read. Okay, so that would end my text introduction. So that whole piece, the piece about like me saying like, are you excited to read the book and giving the vocabulary words or the character names, that whole thing's going to take about 5 minutes. Then I'm ready for the independent reading, right? And during this independent reading time, the kids will each remember have their own book. And they're seated, like around the table, sort of like this. And I'm kind of here in the middle, and I'm kind of leaning in and listening to each one read. And the kids start to learn that when I'm like leaning in front of them, they're going to read to me. Okay. So the teacher is leaning in and listening. She might be even like taking some running records. And the kids are independently reading. I think it's really important to note that the kids are not reading chorally altogether. The kids are not taking turns reading. Everyone's reading on their own. So what you might need to do is like have this one start and then like count to 10 and then have this one start. Okay. Or you might have little separators between your kids. Certainly COVID popular. Okay, and then while they're reading, the teacher's listening, the teacher's taking some notes. The teacher might also be coaching a little bit, giving the kids a little bit of tips, giving them some like ideas for things that they can focus on or work on. And then this time ends with the teacher highlighting a skill. So here she might say, one thing I heard Joe doing was really, really, really trying out different endings for words when they didn't make sense. Like, Joe, could you show us where you did that in the book? Okay, so it's almost like a little like teacher share. Okay, that's how the independent reading ends. And you'll notice when you look across this timeline, you're giving like 10 to 15 minutes to the reading. It's most important to think about this is guided reading, right? And so most of your time you actually want spent reading. Okay, the work then comes back to word work again. And again, for that word work, you're looking at like 2 to 3 minutes or like 10% of the overall guided reading time. Should probably jot this. Okay. So 10%, I get to do word work. So what might I do here? I might do some like word family work or some letter sound work, or maybe I'll get out the whiteboards or get out the magnetic letters. Like I might do something a little more involved, even though it's still only a couple of minutes. When I'm thinking about this book, I think I have two ideas that I could do. The first one is I might explore the KN, the silent KN. So we would find this word in the book and I would show the kids how KN is silent, that we actually only say no. And that happens when K is at the front of the words. Let me show you a few more words where that happens. This is the word knight, like a knight in shining armor. Say knight. And this is the word knot, like when you tie a knot in your shoe. Okay. And say not. And then this is the word knock, like when you knock at a door. So when KN start a word, we don't say the KN, we just say just the N sound. Okay. Readers, today we learned about the silent K. Wow. Okay, that would be one idea for word work. Another possibility might be to write the word could, and then build the word family would and should, and then look in your book and see if you can find this word. Okay, so it's quick word work, but really important. And then guided reading ends with the final part is comprehension. And the comprehension section is typically around 25% of the time. It's about 5 or 6 minutes, equal to the total amount of time you spent on word work. You're going to do things like retell. You're going to do things like answer some comprehension questions. You're going to be encouraging kids to get back into the book. Okay, so something you might do with Digger and Daisy. You might introduce the idea that two characters in a book have a relationship. And that if we look inside the book, we can figure out what the relationship is. So let's see if you guys can maybe come up with some possibilities for their relationship. And so kids will say things like, well, they're friends. Well, how do you know that they're friends? And they're like, well, they do things together. Okay, good. They do things together. That's a possibility. And then the kids are looking on and they might say, well, they look like they might be brother and sister. I'm like, why do you say that? That's called siblings, right? And they say that because like one is taller and one is shorter. Well, that makes sense because like maybe a little brother, right? And then like what here? What do you think the relationship is when you see them here brushing their teeth? What? And she's in the same room as him when he's getting a bath. What? That makes us really think that they might be brother and sister. Okay. And what else do you know about their relationship? They seem really close. They love each other. Okay, those would be great words. So we introduced the idea of relationships for our comprehension. So that's it. That would be the entire guided reading lesson. I'd like to end our time talking about guided reading by thinking about why guided reading might be used in classrooms. So, some classrooms depend on guided reading. Like, there are school districts and schools that guided reading is their primary form of teaching reading. In these schools, they'll do guided reading every single day. Kids will be in a group, all kids will have a group. And these groups, um, when they meet, oftentimes kids will maybe be doing centers during the time where they're meeting, or the kids might even be independently reading. Oh, let's try that again. Okay. Let's end our time together talking about the purpose of guided reading, when and how it might be used in the schools and classrooms that you'll be in. So, guided reading, when it is the primary reading program of a district, they'll typically purchase a series that has lots and lots of six packs and lesson plans to go with it. Fontes and Pinnell Classroom is certainly one, but there are many others. And in these classrooms, all kids will be assigned a guided reading group. Those groups will meet every single day. Sometimes the other kids are independently reading when the groups meet, or sometimes you might see the other kids doing something called Daily Five or like center type activities while the other kids are in guided reading. You'll also have the opportunity to see the digital version of guided reading under this systematic approach. Alternatively, in some districts and in some schools, you'll see guided reading only used as a pull-out intervention. So it'll still follow that like traditional structure, but it'll be a pullout. So in about 5 days, the kids will read about 2 books. They'll be pulled out of the classroom for around 30 minutes. The most popular of the guided reading interventions is called LLI, or Level Literacy Intervention. And a third way that you might see guided reading in classrooms is called strategic guided reading. So this kind of guided reading is much, much faster than the traditional one that we're going to write lesson plans for. This is only about 10 minutes, and it fits inside of a district that might be doing reading workshop, and they just are going to do guided reading periodically with different groups of kids. So occasionally, kids might have guided reading for a couple of days if they're in a new level, or if they've been stuck at the same level for quite some time, or if they're having trouble sticking with a book and they need just like some new reading habits. Okay, so when you watch the videos, when you watch my video, the one of me teaching guided reading, that's strategic guided reading. It is an abbreviated version that's used inside of a reading workshop. These are all great ways to use guided reading. They're just alternatives. I'm hoping by now you feel pretty confident in what guided reading is and how it might look in a classroom. I'd like you to take some time to watch some videos of traditional guided reading, of a digital guided reading lesson, and then finally watch a modified guided reading lesson and my reflection on how I thought that that lesson went. Ultimately, you will write your own lesson plan for a guided reading lesson, which I hope you'll have the opportunity to try out. Let me know how I can help you.